The Baymen, founding the first British settlement in Belize. Welcome to a journey back in time to the shores of Central America, where a group of hardy adventurers, known as the Baymen, established the foundations of what would become the nation of Belize. This is a story of grit, survival, and the valuable resource that drove a tiny settlement to endure against all odds: logwood. Who were the Baymen? The Baymen were primarily British and Scottish sailors, buccaneers, and adventurers who arrived in the area now known as Belize during the mid-17th century. They weren't seeking gold or spices. Their treasure lay in the dense tropical forests. They were tough, resourceful, and fiercely independent, adapting quickly to the challenging environment of the Mosquito Coast. The allure of logwood. Their main motivation was logwood, Hematoxylum campechianum, a tree native to the region. Why was this wood so important? Because it contained a vital dye, a fast, deep, and permanent red, black, and purple color, essential for the booming textile industries of Europe. Logwood was so valuable, it was often called black gold, the logwood lifestyle. Life for the Baymen centered around the grueling work of cutting and hauling logwood. They established camps deep within the river systems, primarily along the Belize River. These settlements were temporary, but formed the nucleus of the future colony. They lived rugged, isolated lives, constantly battling the elements, diseases, and periodic attacks from the Spanish, who claimed sovereignty over the territory. A detailed story of survival and conflict. In the late 1600s, British presence solidified not through formal conquest, but through sheer stubborn occupation. The Baymen built their operations along the swampy coastline and navigated their canoes, called dories, in small sloops up the winding rivers to access the prime logwood forests. The felled logs, often weighing hundreds of pounds, were hauled by oxen or dragged by hand to the riverside. This arduous process, called trucking, was performed during the wet season, when the ground was softest. The presence of the Baymen was a constant source of friction with the Spanish Empire. Spain considered this entire region its territory and viewed the logwood cutters as illegal squatters and pirates. This led to decades of conflicts, where Spanish forces would periodically raid the settlements, forcing the Baymen to flee. However, the Baymen always returned, driven by the immense profit of the logwood trade and the strategic importance of the area to Britain. Crucially, the Baymen depended on enslaved Africans, who were experts at the difficult labor of logwood cutting and transportation. The African enslaved people and their descendants played a fundamental role in the establishment and survival of the settlement, contributing their strength, knowledge of the land, and resilience. This challenging historical context is central to understanding the origins of modern Belizean society. The first permanent British settlement in the region is generally dated to the 1630s or 1640s, primarily driven by the rich logwood reserves found near the Belize River. Fun facts, uncovering the Baymen's world. Let's dive into some fascinating details about the lives, struggles, and legacy of the Baymen that helped shape Belize. The original name. The settlement was not immediately called Belize. For decades, it was simply referred to as the settlement in the Bay of Honduras. The name Belize likely evolved from either a mispronunciation of the Spanish name for the river, Rio Balas, or possibly after a shipwrecked pirate named Wallace. The truck system. The heavy logwood sections had to be transported or trucked from where they were cut to the riverbank. This often involved building makeshift roads and waiting for the rainy season to flood the low-lying areas, making it easier for the oxen and enslaved laborers to drag the massive logs. From logwood to mahogany. Logwood dominated the settlement's economy for nearly 150 years. By the late 18th century, however, a new wood became king: mahogany. Mahogany required even larger-scale operations and contributed significantly to the demographic and economic structure of the growing settlement. Treaties of recognition. Spain only grudgingly recognized the Baymen's right to cut wood in the area through several treaties, such as the Treaty of Paris, 1763, and the Treaty of Versailles, 1783. Crucially, these treaties allowed woodcutting rights, but never granted Britain full sovereignty, setting the stage for future disputes. The defining moment, the Battle of St. George's Cay. In 1798, the final and most significant military confrontation occurred, the Battle of St. George's Cay. A large Spanish fleet attempted to drive out the Baymen once and for all. The Baymen, aided by the Royal Navy and bolstered by the determination of the entire settlement, including the enslaved population, successfully repelled the invasion. This victory, celebrated annually as a national holiday in Belize, cemented the British presence and is often seen as the foundational moment of the nation's identity, ensuring the survival of the settlement and its unique culture. The Baymen's motto. The spirit of the Baymen is often summed up in the Belizean national motto, adapted from the coat of arms, Sub umbra floreo, under the shade I flourish, a nod to the life built under the shade of the forest trees. Test your knowledge. The Baymen and Belize. It's time to see what you learned about the adventurous Baymen, the valuable resource they sought, and the pivotal moments in the founding of Belize. Question 1. The main resource. What was the primary, highly valuable natural resource that drew the Baymen to the area that is now Belize? Gold. Spices. Logwood for dye. Sugarcane. Question 2. Spanish opposition. For decades, which European power viewed the Baymen as illegal squatters and repeatedly attempted to drive them out of the settlement in the Bay of Honduras? France. Portugal. The Netherlands. Spain. Question 3. The pivotal battle. What famous battle, fought in 1798, is considered the defining moment that secured the permanent British presence in the region? The Battle of Trafalgar, the Battle of St. George's Caye, the Siege of Gibraltar, the Battle of the Atlantic. Question 4. Logwood transportation. What term was used for the grueling process of hauling heavy logs from the inland forests to the riverbanks, often using oxen? Sledding, trucking, kayaking. Think about it. If you were a Bayman arriving in the 17th century, what would be the biggest challenge of living and working in the remote tropical forests of Belize? Floating. Thank you for exploring the adventurous history of the Baymen and the founding of Belize.